Well, welcome to the 700 Club, and thanks so much for joining us. Dollar Tree may have to change their name. It's been announced that they're going to be raising prices on some items by as much as $1.50. And it's a sign of tough economic times America's facing with the highest inflation rate in 30 years. It's also a primary factor in President Biden's all-time low approval rating.
Well, today, the president signs his $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill into law. The question is, with a sinking economy, does he have the support to get his $1.75 trillion Build Back Better Act passed? Dale Hurd has more.
As the House prepares to take up Part 2 of Joe Biden's spending plan, the $1.75 trillion Build Back Better Act, his plummeting poll numbers raise the question, can he get the political support he needs to pass it? Biden's approval rating stands at 41%, the lowest of his presidency. 55% disapprove of his handling of the economy. And if the midterm elections were held today, Americans would vote 51% Republican and only 41% Democrat, the widest margin since 1981. Inflation is the highest in 30 years, 6.2%. One sign of the times, Dollar Tree has announced it will be raising prices on some items by as much as $1.50. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says it's the pandemic and not all the big spending in Washington that has fueled inflation.
The pandemic has been calling the shots for the economy and for inflation. And if we want to get inflation down, I think continuing to make progress against the pandemic is the most important thing we can do.
And Joe Biden's economic advisor says passing the expensive almost $2 trillion Build Back Better legislation is the key to fighting inflation, which is exactly the opposite from standard economic thinking.
This, more than anything, will go at the costs that Americans face. You talk about health care, one of the biggest costs that American families face. This will lower prescription drug prices, put a cap on prescription drug costs for our seniors.
Economist Stephen Moore told CBN's Faith Nation program, no, that won't lower inflation.
This is kind of a laughable claim by the Biden administration. I think anybody, even with a junior high school education, knows that if you print more money and borrow more money, trillions of dollars, that's going to make inflation worse, not better.
The House is expected to pass Biden's giant social spending plan this week, but the White House needed 19 Republicans to pass the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, and so far no Republicans support this latest bill. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says that if it gets to the Senate, West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin and fellow moderate Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona will have a say. Both have opposed the high price of the spending bill. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is urging the White House to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help bring down gasoline prices. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, you expect politicians to do what politicians always do, which is, well, we need some kind of bill, we need some kind of spending program, we need another government program to solve this. And it just seems to be a disconnect from reality that the more the government spends, you're actually going to increase inflation. And that's just sort of basic. I mean, just look at history. And the more the government prints money, well, the less valuable that money is, and prices are going to go up. So, but that's what politicians do, and they want to show, well, we're taming inflation, we're doing something here, and we're passing these big bills, and we're getting the headlines for the bills, so please elect us again. That's just the way politicians are, and they seem to live in some kind of alternate reality, and that's on both sides of the aisle. In other news, a former Trump administration official is expected to appear in court today on charges of contempt of Congress. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That is right, Gordon. Steve Bannon is expected to turn himself over to federal authorities today. The DOJ bringing charges over Bannon's refusal to comply with a subpoena to testify before the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol invasion. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows also defied a subpoena and could face similar charges. Republicans accuse Democrats of weaponizing the Justice Department. Meanwhile, new audio reveals former President Trump's reaction to the mob in the Capitol threatening Vice President Mike Pence's life on January 6th. Members of the crowd chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," as Secret Service agents sought to get him to a secure space in the Capitol. In an interview with ABC's Jonathan Karl, the former president gave his interpretation of the scene.
Were you worried about him during that siege? Were you worried about his safety?
No, I thought he was well protected, and I had heard that he was in good shape.
You're saying hang Mike
Because
Pence.
it's common sense, John. It's common sense that you're supposed to protect. How can you, if you know a vote is fraudulent, right?
Yeah.
How can you pass on a fraudulent vote?
So far, no response from former Vice President Mike Pence to those comments. In another development, a federal court granted Trump's legal team's bid for a temporary injunction on records sought by the Select Committee following a prior ruling that the documents are not protected by executive privilege. Well, another major setback for President Biden's COVID vaccine mandate, a three-judge panel rejecting the president's request to lift a court-ordered pause. The judges ruled that the mandate is, quote, fatally flawed and staggeringly overbroad and raises serious constitutional concerns. The ruling came from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That is the court that originally blocked the mandate from going into effect. Meanwhile, the number of COVID cases is expected to rise again with winter fast approaching, but experts don't believe it will be as bad as last year.
We're expecting the surge this winter to be much lower than what we have seen last winter, simply because more people are vaccinated. Cases will go up, but mortality will not go proportional to what we have seen before.
Even though the CDC has yet to recommend everyone 18 and over get the booster shot, 4 states are advising people to get the booster at least 6 months after their last dose. Well, world leaders and environmental groups are expressing disappointment at the final agreement by the UN Global Climate Summit in Glasgow, Scotland. Some 190 nations committed to phasing down or phasing out coal, but critics say it's a watered-down document. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, however, declared the agreement signals, quote, the death knell for coal power. Now, coal is the most carbon-intensive fossil fuel. It is also the world's leading source of power generation, comprising about 38% of the world's electricity. Well, turning now to a story that has a lot of people in politics shaking their heads in astonishment. Edward Durr is a New Jersey truck driver who beat the state's top Democrat earlier this month to win a seat in the New Jersey State Senate. CBN's David Brody spoke with the underdog who managed to take out the leader of the pack.
Hello, my name is Edward Durr. I'm running for New Jersey State Senate. I've lived here all my life, raising my 3 kids.
Edward Durr will be the first to tell you he is a simple man living a simple life as a truck driver. That changed, however, because he and other voters in New Jersey got tired of politics as usual. Durr took on Steve Sweeney, the state's top Democrat.
I think they've woken up because the people sent a clear message Tuesday night that they're tired of being pushed around. And I was just fortunate enough to be the person, so to speak, the tip of the spear.
He pulled off the miracle with limited resources. Incredibly, he spent less than $200 in the primary, half of it on Dunkin' Donuts. Overall, he spent a paltry $5,000 or so.
I think I showed them that you don't have to be a millionaire to run for office. If you just get out and do the work, if you get a good amount of people behind you who support you and believe in you, things can change.
Even former President Donald Trump reached out after Durr's big victory.
You take care. Anything I can do, you let me know, okay? Let me know.
Thank you very much, sir. And you know you can call me at any time.
So how did Durr do it? A bad economy helped, but the truck driving candidate really capitalized on what voters saw as government overreach. It became an issue of liberty.
Certain businesses are forcing people to wear a mask, where certain stores you can go in and out. I'm against government intrusion in anybody's personal life. That's where I stand.
And it also hit close to home as he saw families in his South Jersey area being affected daily.
I've always known that families matter to everybody. Everybody cares about their family. They'll lay down their life for their brother, their sister, their son, their daughter. It doesn't matter. Family is the most important thing.
And that leaves Edward Durr as a true citizen legislator, a concept our founders would applaud. As for the truck driver himself, he doesn't plan to stick around too long.
I don't see any real plans as future politics. I am 58 years old, so I'm certainly not going to be here 30 years. But as long as the people feel I'm doing a good job, and as long as I keep earning their trust, I'll keep working for them as hard as I can. My goal is to fix New Jersey.
We'll see if he can work a miracle there, too. David Brody, CBN News.
Gordon, if there's such a thing as a Cinderella story in politics, I think Durr's story might just be one.
It's incredible, and it shows the vibrancy of our democracy, that here's somebody who can spend literally $200 on a raise, half of that on Dunkin' Donuts, and win and knock off a career politician, a 20-year veteran, a leader of the state Senate. It's, as Terry said, as the piece was running, you got to love it.
You do have to love them. I think a lot of people are just tired of long-term politicians, you know.
And have been for some time. Yeah. And it's like we keep trying to awaken to that career politicians are actually bad for democracy. And they start thinking that their identity, that they are the government as opposed to they're elected by people.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a great story.